Why I chose to self-publish my second book. If you would like to see this post on ElleryWells.com, go to ElleryWells.com/self-publish. There's something about writing a book that makes you stand out in a crowd. Seeing your name in print carries a prestige that only a small few get to understand. On July 8, 2016, I self-published my second book. Though Exit Strategy wasn't my first book to be published or listed on Amazon, it was my first book available worldwide in paperback. If you're considering self-publishing, you might be interested in reading why I chose to do so instead of searching out a traditional publisher. It took me almost a year to write Exit Strategy. In August of 2015, I sat down to write my next book for the first time, and my goal was to write at least 50,000 words. Why 50,000? Well, because 50K is roughly 200 pages, and I felt like 200 pages would be worth the time and effort. Anybody can write an 80-page book, but not very many can punch out a tome of 200 pages or more. Does that sound silly to you? Well, maybe, but that's what I set out to do. I wanted to write something substantial. I wanted my book to have thud value. Self-publishing is a popular option for many authors today, but is it the right option? Here are 8 reasons I chose to self-publish my second book. Why not me? I've always been a reader. When I was younger, I used to read the Hardy Boys books. When I got older, I binged on Vince Flynn. When I got laid off, I started a fiction novel and loved the process of creating a world in which fictional characters could live. Though I stopped writing my novel in 2009, I'd caught the writing bug. Fast forward to 2015, and I remember the question I'd asked myself before starting my novel. Why not me? If other people could write and publish a book, why couldn't I? I consider myself just as creative and just as driven and dedicated as the next guy, so why not set a goal and go after it? Control. Though my experience with, quote, traditional publishers is, well, pretty much non-existent, from what I can tell, they keep a tight grip on the book writing and publishing process. Depending on the company and your contract, publishers have a say in regards to both the cover design and the interior layout of your book. When you self-publish, for both good and bad, you, as the author, have complete control over what goes in and on your book. While writing Exit Strategy, I designed the cover. I tested somewhere around a dozen different ideas before finalizing what I wanted. As about 50 people I talked to at Podcast Movement can attest, I even tested both glossy and matte finishes. As an entrepreneur, I like to maintain control over my work and the final result, and self-publishing allowed me to keep it. By the way, if you haven't purchased your copy of Exit Strategy yet, you can go to theexitstrategybook.com, and there's a link to both the Kindle and the paperback versions. The next thing is timeliness. Again, my experience with large-scale publishers is limited, but from what I've heard, it can take anywhere from 12 to 18 months for a publisher to release your book. That can be a good thing. Since publishers have a vested interest in the success of your book, they put your book through a myriad of tests, edits, and other things to give it the best chances of success. I've never been one to wait around for anything. After I'd put in the work, I wanted to share what I'd done and get results from my efforts. Though having the checks and balances of the publisher has its benefits, it does delay the release of the final product. I chose to self-publish my book so I could control when it was released. To prove I could do it, I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, "Congratulations, publishing a book, this is such an accomplishment." Writing a book is a major undertaking. It takes a ton of time, a colossal amount of effort, and plenty of dedication and planning. Not everyone has the discipline to write a book. According to LearnToType.com, the average person types around 40 words per minute. I type around 75. At 68,599 words, that means it took me about 914 minutes or 15 and a quarter hours to write Exit Strategy. As a side note, after doing all of that math, it really feels like it shouldn't have taken me 10 months to write the whole thing. Anyway, in addition to time, writing a book requires a lot of planning, and I wanted to see if I could stay focused long enough to string together the equivalent of over 70 blog posts, which would last me almost a year and a half. I wanted to see if I could string them together for a book. Profits. Since I chose to self-publish my book, I make around $5.40 for every book sold. That applies to both the $7.99 Kindle version and the $15.99 paperback version. That equates to 67.6% and 33.8% respectively. According to an article I found on authorsguild.org and a small amount of research I did on my own, typical royalties with a publisher are around 15%. On one hand, an author could reasonably assume that if the publisher is taking that much of a cut, they'd be doing a fair amount of work, editing, printing, marketing, etc. On the other hand, if the author can do those things on his or her own, or hire someone to do them, why do they need the publisher? It's a toss-up, but I chose to self-publish to keep a larger portion of the profits. And because of listeners like you, I have the ability to market through my blog, my podcast, or the audio blog like this, or social media and email. Grassroots. Two of my favorite authors got their start through self-publishing. Both Vince Flynn and Dave Ramsey chose to self-publish their books and sell them out of the trunk of their car. And I wanted to do the same thing. Both Flynn and Ramsey have gone on to become bestsellers multiple times over, and they both started with a grassroots effort to share a story and change the world. Odds are, the next time you see me, a box of exit strategy paperbacks won't be too far away. Prestige. Not just anybody can write a book. I mean, they can, but they don't. Because of the degree of difficulty, there are certain barriers to writing a book. If you can work through those barriers and get the final result, there's a certain prestige that goes with that. Finally, I had something to say. As I've mentioned on the Ellery Wells Show, which you can find at ellerywells.com/show, I want to create a culture of entrepreneurship. I believe that the best way for us to fix the problems of the world is for each of us to take responsibility for our results. Plus, I never want people to be miserable at their jobs, and I especially don't want people to remain unhappy because they don't know how to create a plan to leave. The roadmap I laid out in part 3 of Exit Strategy is the step-by-step 8-week outline to starting a business I wish I'd had when I was forced to make a decision about whether to build my business or brush off my resume. If you've got a message that will help people or make the world a better place, it's your duty to share it. Over to you. Would you ever self-publish a book? This was why I chose to self-publish my second book. Thank you for listening to the ellerywells.com audio blog. If you'd like to comment, go to ellerywells.com/self-publish. If you like this type of content, make sure you go to ellerywells.com/awesome. I'll send you a free gift, some free resources, and you can stay tuned to everything that's going on inside the community that is purpose-built to equip and empower entrepreneurs. I'll see you there.